I'm Hugo from Microsoft. Have you tried using the Viva Connections Toolkit to build adaptive card extensions yet? And if so, did you find yourself adding all sorts of console.log statements to try to debug your code? Well, there's an easier way to debug your code. Let me show you how. The adaptive card extension I built has a next and previous button that's supposed to go between pages, but only the next button works. The previous button does not work. So I have added all sorts of console.log statements in my code to try to figure out what's going on. Now this is code that I built using the Viva Connections Toolkit, and one of the things that I can do is I can actually just from within the Viva Connection Toolkit pane, I can actually just start serve with no browser. And so what that's going to do is it's going to do a gulp serve, but it's not launching a browser window. And that's important because I want to set up the debugging first. And the other reason why I don't want to start a browser window is because I'm using a different user profile for my browser instance than I am from debugging. So all I have to do here is I just want to wait for the reload statement. It shows up twice there. Now, one of the cool things that happens with any adaptive card extension projects that are built using the Viva Connections Toolkit is we already configure your debug functionality for you in the launch.json statement. And so you'll see here I have something that's called the hosted workbench. It actually works with Chrome. And this is where I would actually go in my case, I put my workbench URL here. And there's a few other settings that are pre-configured for us, and you can normally just ignore those settings. But one of the things that I need to do, because I'm using a different browser profile, is I want to specify a profile directory, and my user is called SPFX debug. Now, the out-of-the-box version that's configured for us also starts an incognito session, but I don't want to have to log in every single time that I start debugging. So now that I've got that configured, all I need to do is I just need to start the debugging session. And what it will do is it will, you'll see it activating here, and it'll start loading the code directly from the browser. And there you go. It's actually launched the browser window. It's launched it in Chrome, and it's launched it against my user profile that I've configured. And here, if I just go configure my adaptive card extension here to use the large, and I refresh here, I'll just go in preview. What I'm able to do when I start clicking next and previous, again, next works, previous does not work. What's going on? Well, let's go take a look at the code. I have the code connected here to my browser instance. And so I happen to know that the code for the next and previous happens on the on action inside the card view. So what I need to do here is I can just go and I'll just remove all these ugly console.log statements because they were not helping me at all. And what I'll do instead is I'll insert a breakpoint. And you see here, again, I had all the got here messages that were just popping up. I'll just go insert a breakpoint. And to do this, I just go to the left margin and I just clicked to insert. And now when I go back to the code, not the code, sorry, when I go back to the browser and I click on, let me just refresh this, and I click on the next button, what will happen is it'll immediately stop on that line. And the cool thing now is I can actually just mouse over the various variables that are defined here to actually get the state. So I can see here that the button was a submit button and that the ID was next. And if I actually use the navigation at the top there, I can actually go and step over the statement until I get to the part where I can figure out, okay, what was the ID of this button? Again, it was next. I can continue clicking through here to my switch statement, and it shows me that when I click next, it sets the state to change the current page. That works. Now on the previous button, okay, so it triggers the on action button. That's great. And again, if I look, it says that it's calling the previous button. And if I use the step over again, I can step in and see that The ID is called previous for my button. But look at that. In my code, I have the word previous, but it's misspelled. It's missing a U. So all I need to do here is add the U, the missing U, that will fix, hopefully, the code. Let's go take a look. So again, all I have to do is I have to wait for the reload to happen. I can go reload the browser window, and I can just go reconfigure my web part or my adaptive card extension and click the button. If I click previous again, it'll actually show me that the action was previous. And if I step over all this code, what should happen is, yes, it actually reaches the set state, and it's actually decreasing the page number. Let me remove that breakpoint, and let's go try that again. Click next, next, previous. Okay, it's working. That's fantastic. Now there are a few cool things that I can do while I'm in debug mode. So let's actually reinsert our little breakpoint here to make sure that I can trigger that again. And I'll go back to my adaptive card, click on the previous button to actually reach the breakpoint. Now the cool thing is when I'm in that breakpoint, I can actually look at things like run the console to look at variables like action.data, and it's going to pass me the information. I could execute some code here if I wanted to, or I can actually just go create some watch variables. So here I can, for example, I'll just type action, and when my code hits that point, it'll actually tell me what's going on with the action variable, which is great if you're trying to find out where the variable is changing and things like that. And the other thing that you can do is you can actually just select the variable and say add to watch instead of having to type it in. So all these functionalities are actually built in to Visual Studio Code, but the ability to actually debug easily, that's actually configured as part of your adaptive card project. So there you go. It was that easy to use Visual Studio Code to debug adaptive card extension projects that were built using Viva Connections Toolkit. I hope that you'll use this functionality to debug your code, and that's it for me. I have more code to go debug.